What is the will of Zeus or God, and why does he do what he does? This is a question that humans have sought to answer since I'd imagine the entire course of our history as conscious beings, right? Conscious in our own existence, not in this weird or not in this wild, feral way of just like a pack of lions knows that they're lions, right? They belong to this particular pride, but this existence that has a logic and reasoning, and then of course logic and reason. We humans have applied this to the physical realities we observe in our daily existence, right? And sometimes it ends in superstition, a lot of times, the religions, but sometimes it's useful, right, in a science. We use language and other symbolic representation of ideas and processes to explain the physical state of the world. We use, like, for instance, gods, their epithets, symbology, and mythology as a whole. So, logos, of course, is the word or language, and it's spoken or written, so you can hear it or you can see it. There's not much difference between the myths of ancient Greeks and Hebrews and the mathematical language we encounter in our studies at school, where all these basically explain the means to the ends, or sometimes reverse, right? The ends are explained first in search of a way to find the means. What we call science would have been called religion in the past, where Zeus, or God, right? He's the physical existence or observable state of the universe. With time, our understanding of the universe has grown, or more so, our quantitative understanding and modeling of the world around us has gotten more accurate and precise. And this is this is unarguable, right? This, no matter your particular political spin. We all already have an appreciation of this with the calendar, right, and the trek of the Earth around the sun, so resulting in the cyclic nature of the seasons that we see, the change in temperatures, and also just the world itself looks different in each season. This is famously told through the Homeric hymn to Demeter, where Demeter and Zeus couple and they produce Persephone. And we can understand this through the merging of their names. So we have the creation, I'd argue, of meteorology, where Zeus, he's the storm god, and Demeter, well, her name means mother, or better yet, she's like meter, right? She's the measurement god. And they produce Persephone. And then if you look into the name of Persephone, well, it means to kill about, right? So Perse or Perseus or something like that could be thought of as a killer. And then, or sorry, Perse, P-E-R is like perimeter, like P-E-R-I, that we are around or about. And then phony is to kill. So it's like to kill about, right? And this is like the fall, I'd imagine, that the leaves are killed about, right? And then they fall down. And some say it could mean threshing floor, so it's that would make sense too, because you're kind of like killing about, you're smashing the grain, right? And then that would make sense also because Zeus, well, I argue Zeus is the miller, right? Zeus means miller, or he's the lord, kind of of this feudal manner or state. And Demeter is the study of the seasons, and which would be important, right, for the threshing of grain, but also when to plant and harvest, etc. We could see how it's important in this kind of Iron Age or Bronze Age civilization. Rhea, the mother of Demeter, and Rhea is to flow, or we could understand as this dynamic nature of the universe. So we have time, or Chronos, couples with Rhea to form Demeter, which means mother or measurement, right? So time can be used as a measurement, basically. So if you measure time, you add up how much time has flowed, right? How much time has gone by. And Rhea is this rate, or she's just like the instances of occurrences of a certain observable phenomenon. So like if you flip a coin, each coin toss is going to be like part of this accumulation or flow, right? And that's the Rhea. And the flow of the experiment, but also it's going to appear in the divisor, right? It's this total number of occurrences, a rate. You divide by the number of occurrences, right? Or observations. Persephone is captured by Pluto. So the leaves in the fall die and they drop down to the ground. So additionally, the myth also involves the goddesses, besides Rhea, Hecate. And then there's the gods Hermes and Helios, where Helios he's the sun god, so he's analogous to the Sumerian god Shamash. And Shamash, of course, is the god of truth and justice. And also, right, we know that the seasons and the falling of the leaves are a function of gravity ultimately, right? So Hesiod describes, Hesiod in his Theogony, he describes that Apollo is given the ability to sing and speak, right, like Zeus, that through the sun we can understand the varying states and cycles of the universe. He allows us to make observation and records facts about the state of the universe, right, through his language, his song. And right, Apollo and Helios, they're both gods associated with this kind of facts or observing facts, right, in the truth. So basically, if you take into account everything of the myth, it's just an allegory for the commodification of the seasonal cycle of Earth, right? So most importantly, the selling of grain. Again, so Zeus is the miller, right? Because Zeus, well, he goes back to the storm god Teshub, right, the Hittite, and then Teshub is like Adad or Iskor, right? Iskor, the Sumerian god, was the god of, well, he was like the god of canals, and he was the inspector of levees, right? You can understand how in the Sumerian gods, like, storms weren't necessarily how they got water. They got it through irrigation, and that was through flooding from the Zagros Mountains and the Tarsus Mountains, because those flood, once the snow melted from the winter, they flowed down, and then that's where you get the water, and then you irrigate through canals, right? So you can understand how a canal god could turn into maybe a storm god, and ultimately like a miller god, right? That they're ultimately all powered by water. That the water is this kind of life-giving force. So back to the Greek myth, so Demeter and Zeus, along with Iris, Apollo, and Rhea, represent kind of this meteorology, or the science of meteorology, how we get to it and how you make money, right? Hermes, you make money. He's the logistics and mechanisms to bring the grain to the market for profit. Pluto is like the oligarch or capital that causes it all, right, with his rape of Persephone. And Persephone, yeah, she could represent some kind of flower, right? And it makes sense that flower is how we describe grain that's been mashed up, right? And it could just be any plant that grows in nature in a seasonal cycle, or something that we can take advantage of, right, and commodify. So coffee or tea, what have you, right? Coffee and tea are like these huge markets. Hecate, most importantly, is the will of Zeus, right? To be or not to be, as William Shakespeare puts it. And also, Moses understands the Jewish God Yahweh literally to be I am, where I am is a form of to be. And it's like in the Star Wars movies, there is no try. It's a matter of will. You do it or you don't. You don't try, you just do, or you don't. Hesiod describes Zeus as so. So here, Hesiod working days. Through him, mortal men are famed or unfamed, sung or unsung alike, as great Zeus wills. For easily he makes strong, and easily he brings the strong man low. Easily he humbles the proud and raises the obscure, and easily he straightens the crooked and blasts the proud. Zeus, who thunders aloft and has his dwelling most high, attend thou with eye and ear, make judgment straight with righteousness. So through Zeus, men are famed and unfamed, sung or unsung alike. So as great Zeus wills, where will is Greek, where the Greek word for will is Hecate, right? And it's at the ending there of the paragraph I just read. So Hesiod says to attend with eyes and ears to make judgment straight. So again, logos is the spoken or written word of God. Basically, science as we know it today, to make these observations. And again, this is done through the eyes and ears, right? So we see it or we hear it. Science is the method of observing the physical world and its states, all right? So you want to model it. And this is basically what Hesiod describes in his working days, right? It's these different heuristics for the beginning and ending of the phases of the year in ancient Greece. When to plant, when to go out and sail, when not to, etc. So Hecate, or the will of Zeus, ultimately is an all or nothing prospect, and that the oath is fulfilled or not. You win or lose. It's this true or false Boolean logic, right? It's the Boolean algebra. And it's said because Hecate, well, she has no brothers or sisters to share her lot. So here from Hesiod's Theogony, he describes Hecate in her nature, right? So And she conceived and bore Hecate, whom Zeus, the son of Cronos, honored above all. He gave her splendid gifts to have a share of the earth and the unfruitful sea. She received honor also in starry heaven, and is honored exceedingly by the deathless gods. For to this day, whenever any one of men on earth offers rich sacrifices and prays for favor according to custom, he calls upon Hecate. Great honor comes full easily to him whose prayers the goddess receives favorably, and she bestows wealth upon him, for the power surely is with her. For as many as were born of earth and ocean, amongst all these she has her due portion. The son of Cronos did her no wrong, nor took anything away of all that was her portion among the former Titan gods. But she holds, as the division was at the first from the beginning, privilege both in earth and in heaven and in sea. Also, because she is an only child, the goddess receives not less honor, but much more still, for Zeus honors her, whom she greatly aids and advances. She sits by worshipful kings in judgment, and in the assembly whom she will is distinguished among the people. And when men arm themselves for the battle that destroys men, then the goddess is at hand to give victory and grant glory readily to whom she will. Good is she also when men contend at the games, for there too the goddess is with them and profits them. And he who by might and strength gets the victory wins the rich prize easily with joy, and brings glory to his parents. And she is good to stand by horsemen whom she will, and to those whose business is in the great discomfortable sea, and who pray to Hecate in the loud crashing earth-shaker. Easily the glorious goddess gives great catch, and easily she takes it away as soon as seen, if so she will. And easily she takes it away as soon as seen, if so she will. She is good in the byre with Hermes to increase the stock, the droves of kine and wide herds of goats and flocks of fleecy sheep, if she will. She increases from a few or makes many to be less. So then, albeit her mother's only child, she is honored amongst all the deathless gods. And the son of Cronos made her a nurse of the young, who after that day saw with their eyes the light of all-seeing dawn. So from the beginning she is a nurse of the young, and there are her honors. So, in my opinion, this removes the superstition, and because this is the idea of Zeus as the superposition, right? Or he's this kind of quantum wave function that we know today, right? He's the possibility of all the wave functions, or all these kind of possibilities, right? That everything is just basically probabilities. Anything is possible, just some things aren't very probable, so they won't happen with much frequency. But ultimately it's a matter of Hecate, or will, to be or not to be, right? That we observe, did it happen or not? And we can model this behavior of God or Zeus, right, through literary devices, along with kind of the scientific language of mathematics. For instance, people always wonder what God looks like. Even Moses wonders, but like in quantum physics, you only know one piece of the puzzle, right? The position or the momentum of a particle. So same thing how we understand Zeus. That once we know Zeus or his like position, once we're starting to figure out where Zeus is, it's because you're about to die. You're about to get struck down by a lightning bolt, right? It's like it's too late. His awesomeness destroys us, right? Just the appearance of him. Likewise, when Moses looks to see God, he just sees the back of him, right? It's like quantum mechanics and the behavior of waves, that he just kind of sees the momentum. He doesn't really know his position or what he looks like. And that again, so we have the superposition, that life is more of a paradox than an orthodox, that we don't take the same exact track around the sun every year. But that's not to say we can't benefit from the knowledge of data collecting and just asking true or false kind of logical questions, right? That we have a pretty stable calendar now, right? Science has triumphed. The gods will. We understand the God's will, right? Basically, and then literally, you have devices like irony or Iris, the rainbow scribe, that is featured in the hymn to Demeter that precedes the scribe Hermes. Or how I understand Hermes is coincidence, right? So he's like second chances. He's doubling down, he's rematches, etc. And then Iris, right, again, is irony. So what's ironic? That's, Demeter is the mother god, but she's like, again, like the worst mother, right? So it's like, ironic is like you go to you go to like the dentist, and your dentist has like bad teeth or something, or he has like no teeth. Well, Demeter, the mother goddess has lost her kid, and that's like any mother goes through this
kind of dread or fear. She loses kind of her sight of her child, and it's like, oh my God, I'm the worst mother. Or she's also the grain goddess, right? And then there's no grain. So what kind of grain goddess is this? It's ironic, right? We interpret Hermes, though, and then on the other hand, we interpret Hermes as luck. So he's either good or he's bad. That's why we call Hermes Ariones. He's the luck bearer. And then, yes, luck is kind of this binary true or false Boolean logic, but we also know it in these more relative terms, right? This kind of wave. Like you have lucky streaks, and then your luck will go down, and then you're going to have unlucky streaks, and then maybe you'll find a lucky souvenir or something, and then or charm, and then your luck will start to go back up. So luck and superstition are the opposite of the superposition, right? So superstition is like luck, right? So it's again a true or false. You saw something, and now every time you see it, you think of something bad or something good, right? And it's the opposite of this kind of superposition where anything is possible. It's just kind of some things are more probable than other, right? And you kind of got to know what to look for, the heuristics. So Hermes ends the hunt for Persephone, though, right? He brings kind of the conclusion. The market has spoken after it. So superposition is any outcome is possible until observation, right? It's the Schrodinger's cat or whatever. And the superstition is just one outcome, right? You're above one intersection of events that's possible, or just one little you're at this like one little section or interstitial part, right? This one little point. Another way to say this is the orthodoxy versus the paradox, right? That we don't cross the same river once. Like luck is kind of bullshit, right? Statistics proves that luck is bullshit. But people still today have superstitions, or right? We have Orthodox Christians, right? Like God rose exactly this day and time, and then he was born exactly this time, right? And then there's people who believe like if you have bad luck, that just going out and betting on a horse, right, is like enough cosmic karma somehow. Even if you're not attached to that horse, you still lose this, right? Like you're just this bad luck person. And then Helios, or the sun, or light, of course, has both physical and wave-like properties. But it's more so than that, right? It's the sun, just the ability to track the sun and make money off of it is going to give rise to all these cults, right? You see all these cults form up around the sun, right? This light, and it's like iris, right? This rainbow of colors and ironies. And a lot of these might seem true, or they're kind of maybe like true at first, but then again, like sometimes they might be false, right? This irony. And irony leads to depression and nihilism. So irony is related to the cold iron heart of Demeter. And then Persephone is captured by Hades, who is said to be ruthless and pitiless of heart, which is like, well, in Greek how it's described or how it translates, it's like nihilistic, right? He's just pitiless. He doesn't care about anything. Demeter becomes depressed during the wintertime. A lot of people do. This kind of nihilism as the sun goes away, right? And then the day gets shorter. And then she also becomes kind of psychotic, right? Hermes is the psychopomp and hermetic. She hides away. And then again, Persephone is nihilistic with Hades. And the sun, it brings truth, warmth, and then it brings these maximum points, or solstice, right? Say that once Helios relays his observation to Demeter, it's only a matter of time before she's reunited with her daughter, right? Like before she has no idea, and then after Helios, then she has some idea, and we start to get some resolution, right? So all these cults spring up and necessitate the other, right? To keep the miller or Zeus profitable. Zeus can be translated into spelt. Spelt is an ancient form of flour or grain that was used to make these kind of non-rising breads, so like crackers, or you could say like cookies. And they were and this is kind of associated with the Bible and Passover, right? These non-rising breads. So because Zeus is like the lord of the feudal society, and he's profitable by receiving grain and then grinding it up into flour. To keep Zeus or the miller profitable, you need, of course, Hermes, who represents the market forces and mechanisms of supply and demand, which, of course, are like a wave too, right? So, again, Hermes is coincidence, where I'd say it's like a wave. How can we visualize this duality of matter? Well, one way we say is it's like the wave in the ocean, or like these, right? Because the Odyssey, where Odysseus is related to Hermes, right? He's a descendant of Hermes. It takes place mostly at sea, right? And it's about It's kind of like this wave function is like ever present in the Odyssey. But we mathematically we can describe it through the sine and cosine waves, right? And I don't know, maybe there's a way to mathematically describe irony and coincidence in terms of sine and cosine, but we know mostly through supply and demand, right, or what drive stock prices and give it its chaotic and wave-like shape, right? Price goes up and down. It goes up and down during the day. It goes up and down during the minute. It goes up and down during the weeks, right? There's many different trends within the trends. And that's because of the humanness of the market. That's this, what we call a random walk. It's this Brownian motion, right? Like Persephone goes on a random walk, and it's the will, and through the will, or because of Hecate and then irony, Iris, and then Hermes is kind of psychosis. We have these psychological operators, right, that they affect your perception of reality, or they could be tools to guide you through reality, right? We know Hermes is this kind of guide as well. But the problem with this like Boolean logic of true or false, or this Hecate, the will of God, is you could get caught in a loop, because Hecate is just pure will. So it's like an if loop, right? If this or that, right? And we're writing code. And then after the if this or that, and following that, logically it's then something, right? So after you figure out if it's this or that, then you do something, right? And Boolean algebra or bookkeeping might not be enough to build a model, but it's going to be necessary within a model to use this type of logic, right? Everybody uses if loops and such. But you got to be careful not to get caught in a loop, right? You got to have a counter and such, and something maybe to bounce you out. And then infinite loops that we know probably behaviorally as a psychosis, right? This hex of Hecate, right? Hecate is like a curse. And then like the hermetism of Demeter, she's like kind of like psychotic, goes and hides. And then cold-heartedness of Iris and irony. And then a nihilisticness and depression of Persephone and Hades. So, right, and this makes sense because Hermes is the psychopomp, or he's a psychological god. And again, of course, the stock market is it's not purely psychological, but it's driven by psychosis, or the psychological kind of perception of reality of the people buying shares, right? So it's not purely mathematical. Share prices of companies can be affected by more than just statistics and revenue. Yes, using statistics and all that could make you money, but it's not just that, right? You're not going to predict everything. You can't predict every single thing. And this turns out to be true, right? That the stock price of a company can be found to be kind of follow this Brownian motion, and if it goes up, it's like this exponential motion. It goes up, and if it goes down exponentially. So it's like Persephone, right? Again, she goes out for a walk, she's captured, supply goes down, demand goes up, and then Zeus profits, right? Because Hermes comes out, and the market mechanisms and logistics and all that's figured out. And then Persephone goes home. She ends up at the same place, right? It's this random walk. It's all relative.